Hello, everyone out there. Welcome to our first ever live podcast. Eric, thanks for taking a few minutes so we could do this tonight.
Good to see you, man. Absolutely.
Well, it's been something we've wanted to do for quite some time. I know a lot of people have asked us when would we finally go and start doing some video podcasting, and I know we've put a little bit of work into that and trying to do it. So finally, some of those labors coming to an end, so to speak.
That sure has.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people there's a few things we want to talk about tonight. So just so everyone knows you're able to chat along with us. You can share your comments wherever you may be watching, and we will answer and respond to those as we can in the midst of the show. We may even put your name up on the screen and show everyone your questions. So don't hold back. Be sure to share those thoughts with us. So I think, Erica, a lot of people have asked us a little bit about how the Liberty Loft came about. So let's start there. I know we've talked a little bit about this in some of our other shows, but we started back. It's been over a year ago. You and I, we became friends, and um, felt like it would be fun to start a little something, but we never had any idea it was going to be something like this.
Absolutely not. And the following that we've gotten across all of our markets has just been phenomenal. So I want to thank everybody that's tuned in, that's helped us out both on the podcasting side and the article side. It's been amazing. We appreciate the support.
And a lot of people ask us about how many people we reach with Liberty Loft. A lot of people have said, "Oh, it's a small operation. You can't reach a lot of people." So far this year, we've reached over 10 million people. So just to share with you a little bit, and we're proud of that. Without people like you that have been sharing our shows and articles and things, we would have never got there. So thank you so much for that. We actually never thought it would have been that many, but we've been excited to reach that many people. So, Eric, I think let's start off first. Let's talk a little bit about the Supreme Court. Obviously,
Sure.
Amy Coney Barrett, the hearings are going to start tomorrow with the Supreme Court nomination that Trump made to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And there's a lot of people talking about what may happen in this situation. I've shared many times, and I even talked about it on my show that will come out tomorrow. I don't believe this turns into the same thing as Brett Kavanaugh. Now, they're going to turn it into a show. I mean, they're going to make it a chaotic mess. But it's obviously not going to be a sexual assault, sexual harassment kind of thing. What are you looking for?
I'm with you. There's going to be a show. I think they're going to pull out about every punch they possibly can. I think as if they know that they're stuck. With Kamala Harris, she came out today with an article stating the fact that because of COVID, Trump is not taking into consideration either as Senator Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell. They're not taking safety into account. But I kind of want to take that just a little bit further as well. And I was going to make mention of it on my podcast coming up this week. One thing is, if they're going to be using mail-in ballots, if they're going to be using other platforms for debating before they decided that they're going to cancel the upcoming presidential debate, there are platforms to ensure safety. Surely enough, somebody in the Senate and their staffers there can be smart enough to see that. But I don't think there's any way that the Democrats can stop this from going forward. I think they know that. COVID aside, I really just think that they're stuck, and that's resonating with them. So.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think that's the one thing most people don't realize is I think Democrats have come to the realization they can't do anything about Amy Coney Barrett. Republicans know they have the votes. So we know that she can be confirmed to the Supreme Court. One thing I think that was really telling was an article I read earlier today from Axios, and Chuck Schumer made the statement. He wanted her to recuse herself from any potential Affordable Care Act case or any Obamacare case. And as I was sitting and I was thinking about that, I said, that shares and tells me he's come to the realization I can't do anything about her. I've got to accept she's going to be there. I can't change what's being done.
Sure.
But how can I limit her? How can I keep her from causing any more damage? And by guilt tripping her into recusing herself, that's what they're looking to do.
Correct. And I think, it's been mentioned tons of times, even though both Kamala Harris and Joe Biden will not make mention of it. And I know that you wanted to discuss this as well with the court packing. I think the reason why they've come to the realization is they know should Joe Biden win in November, that is going to be their ultimate goal. So I think they've progressed past the fact, hey, let's be worried about Amy Coney Barrett, to even if she is confirmed, we still have tricks up underneath our sleeve that we're going to use, even if she is confirmed. So really, this is not going to be the end of us. You will see us again, and we will bring our tricks and deception and things of that nature, should Joe Biden win on the 3rd.
Yeah, absolutely. They're absolutely going to pack the court. There's no question about that. I mean, they have their game plan. They have their goals in mind. There's no secret about this that they're going to pack the court.
Sure.
They can refuse to answer the questions. They can refuse to talk about those things. They're going to pack the court. Joe Biden will pack the court. No question in my mind. The question becomes, how many do they pack it with? I've had a lot of people ask me, how many do you think they pack the courts with? Do they pack it with just a few to overrule the conservatives? I know some have suggested going to 15 justices. I believe that's probably the most ideal number they go to.
Sure.
So there's no question that they pack the court. But what kind of liberal justices do they place on the court? We know that there's some liberal circuit court judges that were put into place that are still there from the Obama days. So knowing they're going to do that, it's going to be interesting to watch.
And I think one thing that we've got to be careful of as well, should this be the case and should Joe Biden be elected, I think if you get to the 15 justice panel, if that is the number, should they get to that, I think what they would intentionally do is they would find the best justice possible for one particular court issue. And I think that they would just cherry pick those individuals. We want the strongest supporter for Roe v. Wade. That would be this particular nominee. So instead of it being an across the board liberal judge, they're going to cherry pick each individual judge for one particular item. And at least that way, if they've got the majority, I think that that's what they would do. If I was a liberal, that's what I would do. Thank the good Lord I am not.
Well, and they're going to do that, but the thing that they're going to look at doing as they start stacking those is justices that have an expertise in one area,
correct,
but that are willing to go along with the liberal cause no matter what. Sure. It's one thing to pack a liberal justice that is in favor of Roe v. Wade. We know there's plenty of those out there, and they would have no issue finding that.
Sure. But
they may struggle in finding one that's as supportive of, say, the Green New Deal or some of the other controversial legislation. So I think another thing that I think is important right now is the coronavirus situation and President Trump, specifically related to President Trump. I think a lot of people have looked at President Trump's situation. A lot of liberals have written this off saying, well, he got the best care possible. He got the best of everything the United States government could throw at him. He got all these great things. Okay, I'm not even gonna justify that with a response. But at the end of the day, the treatments that he received are available to the general public. There was nothing that was shared that he received that was any kind of trial, any controversial medications and development. These are things that every American could receive if they come down with coronavirus and went to the hospital.
Correct.
So I do think it's important, though, that President Trump come out like he did and said, hey, look, don't let this scare you. Don't let this drive fear, because that's what the Democrats continue to do.
Sure. Yeah, and he's been criticized for the downplay of the virus, dating all the way back to February or March. What he knew, what he didn't know, when did he know it, things of that nature. But again, you and I agree, and there's a lot of people in this country, and once they cast their ballots in November, they will resonate that as well. They support President Trump on that. It is very, very important for a president to be presidential. FDR in World War II did the exact same thing. He didn't, cower before Congress and say run and hide. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, George W. Bush as well after 9/11. It was important for him to get back to Washington, D.C. It was important that the American people could actually see him in the presence and to let them know, one, he's still alive. The resolve of the American people is there, and that the presidency, even though it's larger than just one person, it's very, very important that the American people see that via the president, the continuity of the government and the resolve of the American people.
And I think that's what a lot of the liberals miss. They seem to think, hey, okay, he's going out here, he's being chaotic. And that's what even Joe Biden is out here saying. He's campaigning saying, oh, President Trump, he's being careless. He's being reckless. He's out here. No, he's actually showing the people, guess what? You can contract the coronavirus and you can completely recover. Now, don't take what I'm saying wrong. I'm not saying go out here and rip off your mask and throw carelessness. You're not going to hear me say that. I don't think you or I, either one, would sit here. you need to do what you feel safe to do. If you feel like you can safely go around with that one, so be it. At the end of the day, President Trump is saying you can contract the coronavirus, and guess what? You can recover and fully recover. But there's chances you're going to die from many other things. So I don't think he's negating the risk. I don't think he's out here saying be careless. I don't think he's saying the coronavirus is nothing important. But I do think he's showing the real nature of the coronavirus.
Sure. And that's important. I mean, let's face it, it doesn't matter what he could say or how he would go about saying it. The left's going to turn it one way or the other. But I think if you are a strong-willed American and you understand the principles of democracy, then it's not very hard for you to ascertain that it's important. It's vital for the president to be presidential and to lead by example, and not to instill fear. Had he stood up there and mentioned all the bad things that COVID could do, we'd have been in a much different place, in a much darker place as a country than where we are right now.
So the other thing about President Trump we have to talk about here, he's obviously fighting for re-election. I've heard a lot of people's takes on this for the re-election of Trump. If you look at the polls, Real Clear Politics has him down by almost 10 points. And I know as conservatives, we often want to argue, well, they underestimate Trump voters. And that is true to a point. They do underestimate Trump voters. So in that consideration, though, if you look back at 2016, they did not underestimate Trump voters by 10 points.
Right.
They underestimated them by 3, 4, and sometimes maybe as most as 5 points. Right. In consideration of that, what do you think President Trump, in your opinion, what does President Trump have to do in order to win?
Well, it's always, for the last 3 elections, it's been the big states. Obviously, the left is going to get the New Yorks and the Californias. I really strongly feel, again, that Florida is going to be a battleground state. But, you can't forget about the Ohios and the Minnesota, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina. Particularly after census moving forward, North Carolina will be one of those states that gets a lot more electoral votes. But looking towards November, I really think he needs to appeal, forget a lot of the going back and forth with Joe Biden, and really try to have that heart-to-heart, particularly with the manufacturing sectors of communities in Ohio and Pennsylvania, the steel workers, the manufacturers, things of that nature, and really have that heart-to-heart and not to bring up the past and bring back up sore subjects, but to kindly remind them, hey, where were you in 2008? Where were you in 2009? When Joe Biden was in the Oval Office and you were then in the unemployment line? That is what is ahead of you as well. Joe Biden wants to talk about an increase in manufacturing jobs. Joe Biden wouldn't know a manufacturing job in the United States if it fell down, hit him in the face, and started to wiggle. He's very good at selling those jobs overseas to China, but I think it's important for Trump to have those heart-to-heart conversations with people in those communities and in those states. And if he does that, and he does that effectively, leave everything else alone and speak directly to the people that way, I think he can pull those states off. And in case he's going to need those come November.
And those are the very voters that Joe Biden is out to get. I mean, Joe Biden knows he cannot win without Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, all those key states, North Carolina. And it's crazy to think about. I know 10, 15 years ago, you or I, neither one growing up in North Carolina, would have thought we would have been in a battleground state like this. It used to be such a conservative state. While we have a lot of people that are still registered as Democrats, they're that old school Democrat mentality. And it has really changed here in North Carolina. So these are the voters that Joe Biden is banking on. He is committed, saying, these are the people I'm going to win with. And I think President Trump has to go back and make that argument. Look, Joe Biden's had a chance once. Now, granted, he wasn't on the main part of the ticket, but he sat in the White House. He done a lot of this work. He done a lot of the things that President Obama couldn't do. Sure. Obama didn't have the relationships in the Senate. He didn't have the relationships across the Congress that Joe Biden did. So when it took to getting these measures passed and getting the support, Joe Biden's the one that did that. So if you think back about what Joe Biden has done, what Joe Biden was doing, you look back at 2008 to 2016, that's what you're going to get. But the wild card in this is Kamala Harris. I think a lot of people are sitting here saying, well, Joe Biden's radical. Yes, Joe Biden is radical, but Joe Biden is a puppet. Joe Biden is not the main.
Joe Biden is very malleable. He can be molded to fit anything. And that's the reason why he's headed the Democratic ticket. They knew that going into advance. So.
Yeah, and Kamala Harris, I mean, there was no mistake that she came out and said that it was her ticket. It was no mistake. She said it was her administration. That was probably the most honest thing that has came out of the Biden campaign since the beginning, is that Kamala Harris is really in charge.
Yep.
So, and all they've done is mislead the American people. I talked about that before. They talk about the things that they're doing, and they continue to mislead the American people. We're not going to support the Green New Deal, except his website says they are. We're not going to ban fracking, except they're on video saying they are. So all these things that's one way and the other, that they're not being honest. And I think that a lot of people, even though polls show the majority of the American people do not trust the mainstream media, they still believe the lies. They're still believing what the media is saying.
Right. And I think that goes back to, how society is now. We want that easy way out. We want that instant gratification, whether I'm going to click and order something on Amazon and make sure it gets here tomorrow, or I want my news feed the exact same way. And the liberal mainstream media is very clever in how they do that. Just enough, not too much, and it pacifies you so you can go stand around the water cooler at the office and pretend as if you know what it is that you're speaking of. And I think that's very, very dangerous, but they're very intentional and they're very clever in how they go about doing that. And for those individuals that get your news off of social media sites and things like that without going to the other side and saying, hey, there's always two sides to the story, and somewhere in the middle, there's probably the truth. And I think that's why we've got a lot of individuals that follow us, both in the written format as well as on podcasts, because they can see we've done our work. We're not one way or necessarily the other. There have been instances where we've disagreed, even with something that President Trump has said or done, and that's okay. I think that clarity is important. So I think people that follow us will be able to see that. But individuals need to take it upon themselves and find the true answers, and not just that little snippet so you can go to work and pretend like you're well informed. It's a very dangerous mentality.
No, absolutely. And I think you brought up a really good point for people that talk about the Liberty Loft and the things we do. Yes, we're conservative. We had no basis that we're conservative. We're not sitting here telling you that we're unbiased media. We approach everything from the conservative perspective. And we're both Trump supporters. We both have sit here and talked about that openly, that we are going to support President Trump in the election. But it doesn't mean that we support everything he does. President Trump has some of the best policy that conservatives have had in years. And I think that you've got to look beyond the statements. You've got to look beyond his comments, look beyond his tweets, and look at the actions of what President Trump has done. That's what's important. What are his actions? And a lot of his actions have been good.
Absolutely has. And I hate to be cliche, both the left and the right have said this over and over and over. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Absolutely correct. You are. I don't think there's anybody in America, if they would just shed all of the liberal mainstream media junk that's thrown on them, if they really sat down around the kitchen table and had an open and honest conversation with members of their family, and they looked at that and they said, hey, are we better off today with Donald Trump being president than we were 4 years ago under an Obama administration? I very seriously doubt that anybody, if they were true and honest with themselves, could say, no, we are not. You may not like the guy. Perfectly fine. You don't vote for an individual for president because you like him. Not that you'd like to go have a beer with him or go eat dinner with him. Is he able to keep your country safe? Is he able to keep your country solvent? And if he's able to do that on all fronts, domestic and international, if he's able to do that, then of course you got to vote for him.
And that's the concern about Joe Biden. We're sitting here. Was he able to do that as part of the Obama administration? Absolutely not. From the beginning of the Obama administration to the end, were you better off? The majority of Americans would have to say, no, we were not better off. That's what led to President Trump. That's what led to him winning the race. Clinton would have been just more of the same. So I think that's the key here, is looking beyond the statements, looking beyond the things that he says. I follow the president on Twitter. I see the things he says. I listen to what he talks about. Some of it's good and some of it is not so good. Do I like the personal pointed attacks? Sometimes they're good. A lot of times they're not. But if you look beyond that, look at the policy, look at the things that he has done. He's generally done very well, especially for conservative Christians like us. And I'm not sitting here saying that we want him to rule the country just solely on Christian values. I'm not sitting here saying that that's the case at all. I do appreciate that, though. I value that as a conservative Christian myself.
Absolutely. I prefer that as well. But there is a clear cut distinction between church and state for a reason. Those guidelines are there. So obviously we need to adhere to that. But I think it's really, really important, again, for people to be honest with themselves. And, taking this to account, we saw it in the debate where they were stating all of the job growth under the Obama administration. Well, you got to look back at 2008. You could only go up. I would have prayed to God you wouldn't go down. So the job growth that you had was all of the jobs that were lost already in 2007 and 2008. So you can't really classify that as job growth. But going back to the manufacturers, the importance of the states of Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Pennsylvania. If there's one of the huge questions now to the left is, what am I going to get? What is the government going to do for me? And I'm not exactly certain how President Trump, when he has that heart-to-heart, if he decided to do that and really appeal to these voters, but if he was able to kind of shed that and speak to them and say, look, again, not taking the page out of, what can I do for my country, or, all of that. But what he really needs to do is say, look, you don't need any of this. You don't need the government assistance. If government and me and my administration can keep you solvent and keep you employed, then you don't need any of this. And that's the deception of the Democratic Party is, the mentality that the government's going to do all of this. If you listen to Kamala Harris in the debate, if you're gay or lesbian, if you were old, if you were disenfranchised, if you were poor, if you're the age of 26 living on your parents' couch, all of this stuff, from food to rent to mortgage to education, all of that is going to be teetotally free. And there's a lot of individuals, young and old, who believe that government has all of this money, that the government is paying for this and the government is paying for that. And both you and I know, we learned this a long time ago in our 7th, 8th grade civics class. Government doesn't have anything unless we give that to them. And unfortunately, we've given them a lot of power. We've given them a lot of money, and they've wasted a lot of money. So I really think that people really need to start paying attention. But again, it comes down, they've got to self-educate themselves too. Or they can just tune into us and we'll be more than happy to help them out.
Well, that's something you don't hear from the left at all. You sit here and you listen to the left. They're saying the government can basically legislate pay. They can legislate money. They can legislate jobs. That's not the government's role. That's not what the government can do. The government can't provide those things. They can't simply just vote in a salary. That is communism. That's the exact term for that. That's not something that's not the government's role or responsibility.
Correct.
Well,
Just
I think
like I mentioned in my podcast over the weekend, when Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have said that there's a class system in the United States, they're absolutely correct. There is a class system, the haves and the have-nots. But there's also have and have-nots in communism and socialistic countries as well. You've got the top, and you've got everybody else. It works just like a pyramid scheme. So the only thing that you're doing at that point in time is you're just flipping the pyramid scheme. You're still going to have those 1%ers, except the 1%ers are going to be the government, not the private citizens.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw a couple of people comment and saying they had questions, but I haven't seen those questions come across. We'll give them just a couple more minutes. If you have a question for either one of the guys here, we're happy to answer. Just let us know, comment wherever you may be watching. We're glad to answer those questions. So Eric, I think we talked a little bit. You and I both have the podcast that we're doing. You said a minute ago you're working on something for the coming week. So what are you working on there that you might be willing to share without giving away everything for everyone to tell them what to expect?
Well, I just have some ideas. I don't want to share too much. I was doing a lot of brainstorming while I was sitting in the deer stand this weekend. I spent a lot of time thinking, less time killing deer. So. But it'll be a little bit more of the same. I think, we do a great job as far as our podcast. You're a little bit more informative than what it is that I offer in my platform. I try to speak more general and get the sense of where I think a lot of the people are thinking or where they should be thinking. So I think you and I have a great mix as far as what we offer. And hopefully we can blend those audiences over. But for this week, again, I don't want to share too much. I haven't put it to paper or anything like that, but it'll be good as always. I'm slightly biased.
No conceit at all. No
No, not
conceit.
at all. Not at all. You got to love yourself first, man.
Well, there's a couple things I'm working on. I kind of want to share with everyone here
Sure.
as well. So I've not shared it on the podcast. I've not shared it on any of our social media, but we've got a couple of great interviews that are scheduled this week on my podcast. I got an interview with Clint Lawrence. I don't. You may remember him. He was a military member that received a pardon from President Trump after his actions overseas. So he's written a book. I'm going to have him on the show to talk. It's going to be a great thing. He and I have talked several times over the last few weeks. And I'm also interviewing someone here in North Carolina that's not far from us, Eric, named Nathan Tabor. He's a very outspoken public I guess more of a public speaker. He does a lot of motivational speaking and such, but he speaks a lot about the conservative movement. And so he'll be joining and he'll be talking about conservative Christians and their support of President Trump. We hear a lot of people saying that conservative Christians should not support President Trump. And so he and I are going to talk a little bit about that and obviously several more things. So those are a couple things that will be coming up over the next couple of weeks on my podcast. And I think one other thing, Eric, is I know we're getting up close to the time you and I plan to chat, but just for fun, to share a little more about us, obviously this is a behind the scenes podcast we're telling everyone. So if we're thinking about that being behind the scenes, you shared a minute ago, you like to deer hunt. So I think it'd be interesting. Tell a couple other things for people that are not politically related at all that you do enjoy.
Like you, I'm very involved in our church. I've been a member of the Lutheran faith my entire life, so all 38 years. I do like the outdoors. I own and operate two businesses. I have a truck driver training school with all of our locations in the state of North Carolina, and I also own a firearms business here locally outside of Hickory.
Yep, and if you have any questions, yes, Eric takes a lot of my money for the firearms business. We're both firearms enthusiasts. We both love to go out and to enjoy firearms. Obviously, any chance we get to enjoy our Second Amendment rights. So, very happy with that.
We can only hope that Trump prevails and Amy Coney Barrett is nominated to the Supreme Court, because it's been over 10 years since the Supreme Court has listened to any oral arguments whatsoever regarding firearm and Second Amendment rights. So it's definitely coming, good, bad, or ugly. It's definitely coming. So
it is, and I think that's really a big that's really the big thing that right now people between Amy Coney Barrett and her being I guess confirmed to the Supreme Court, they will start hearing arguments before Joe Biden could win the election, before the Democrats could win the Senate, and before they could go and pack the court. They're going to start listening to arguments again. You know, we've got until January till Biden would take office if he were to win. Now, I'm not convinced Biden's going to win, but I said if he were to win. So that's one of the things that I think we have to pay attention to, pay very close attention to. There's some really interesting cases that are on the dockets that are coming up. So it is important that she is confirmed. And I think it's also important, one of the things that people hear me talk about over and over and over, we have to focus on the Senate. Yes, I believe the presidential race is very close. I don't think it's a 10-point spread, but I also don't think, as it stands right now, I do believe the media has shaped the race a little bit, and I'm not 100% convinced it's going to be a landslide victory by Trump. No. But I do think he has a chance to win. I don't see any reason why he doesn't. That's something that you're not going to hear on the mainstream media. They're going to say Trump's going to lose. So they're not going to tell you that.
How bad is he going to lose?
Yeah, and that's exactly right. So I do think Trump has a chance to win. But all things considered, the most important thing that the Republicans can do is win the Senate. And that, I think, is a toss-up as it stands right now. If you look at a lot of these, especially when you're looking at polls, you look state by state, looking at how close these are. You know, President Trump is winning in a lot of these battleground states. You hear nationally he's down by 10. Well, of course. I mean, there's millions more Democrats in these bigger cities that are going to vote for Joe Biden. But when you look at the localities and those states and those local races, it's close on a lot of these Senate races. It's close on a lot of these things. And I think it's close for President Trump. I think he stands a really good chance, but you've really got to pay attention to those close races. Yeah. And the Senate's important. I cannot stress enough how important the Senate is for Republicans.
I hate to say right off the House, but unfortunately, you do kind of have to write off the House. It's going to stay in Democratic control. But I'm right there with you as far as the Senate is concerned. Should Joe Biden win, and if we were to lose the Senate and they maintain all three, we're in trouble.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We cannot afford for the Democrats to get control of all three. So
no. Absolutely.
Well, Eric, it's been fun doing our first live
Pleasure.
behind the scenes podcast. I think it's been a great experience. Thanks everyone that's joined and watched. We've seen a bunch of you popping up on the screen that's been watching and interacting with us. We certainly appreciate that. The recording will be available on social media. Sometime in the next day or so, we'll post the audio as well on our podcast so you can listen to our conversations there. And I think it's something we're going to do a lot more often. We're going to come back and be doing a lot more of our Liberty Minute videos. And I think we'll be pulling in some of our other writers from the Liberty Loft website to talk with us as well over the next few shows. So looking forward to that. Otherwise, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you all again soon.
Thank you.